Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Senator Kennedy is just not having it when this ridiculous, smug, know-it-all bureaucrat tries to pull the wool over his, and by definition, the American people's eyes. Senator Kennedy is not having it. Let's dive in.
I mean, I see this essay that you wrote in the New York Times, appropriate New York Times. Climate change should make you think home ownership. Did you write that?
Yes, I did, Senator.
It's pretty bold. You own a home?
I do, in a flood zone.
Have you sold it?
Have I sold my home?
Yeah.
I live in my home, sir.
Oh, well, you're telling everybody else to sell theirs. You're a climate extremist, aren't you, Professor?
Certainly not, Senator.
You are a political extremist, aren't you?
Certainly not, Senator.
On July 9th of 2024, did you tweet the following, quote, "Honestly, the biggest long-term political problem the Democrats have is that they don't know how to talk to low-information morons," close quote.
I don't believe those are my words, Senator. I'd have to be able to see them if you would share that with me.
Yeah, here it is, big as Dallas.
I don't believe those are my words, Senator.
You tweeted them.
I don't believe that I did.
Yes, you did.
I may have liked someone else's tweet or retweeted someone else's tweet.
Do you
Those
often
are not my words.
like tweets you don't agree with?
Those are not my words, Senator.
Yeah, but you tweeted them in approval, didn't you? You
Those are
can't
not-
make this cat walk backwards, Professor.
Those are
On
not
July
my,
16th,
those are not my words, Senator.
2024, did you tweet the following, quote, "A big part of modern right-wing culture is this frisson of the illicit. The reading of this or that writer or account that are outre in whatever ways, fascist, race IQ obsessives, Holocaust denial adjacent, people with very weird sexual fixations and pathologies they turn into their own philosophy, etc. A lot of them, and I think this is true of Vance, and definitely true of the creepy Silicon Valley MAGA weirdos, have simply pickled their brains," end quote.
Again, Senator, those are not my words, and I did not
Tweeted them,
tweet.
Professor.
I did not tweet that, sir. Those are not
Senator
my
Kennedy,
words.
I mean, let me make this last point. You've got
for more
a lot
than
of
2
nerve.
minutes over your time. We
You've
have
got
other
a lot of
senators
nerve,
waiting.
Professor, coming
You
here
always go over your time
and,
so that I have to call
and
it
lecturing
for
us
you.
about Holocaust denial
But
being
really,
from the University of Pennsylvania.
You have other senators who are waiting for their time, and you're well over yours.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. Okay, that chairman, by the way, started this committee meeting about 20 minutes late. Granted, that's standard government time, but let's be honest. Senator Whitehouse, while he's a good chairman, he's not exactly a good judge of character. And that's because Dr. Benjamin Keyes, who is part of the real estate school at the business school of Wharton, this guy is out here screaming, "You shouldn't own a home." What a bunch of baloney. The #1 wealth creator for not just America, but throughout history, has been owning your own land. And so, when you own a home, you are essentially owning land. And this professor is out there screaming, well, there's a problem with the insurance world, so we really need to take it from the average person and give it to these corporations who are buying up all the land and then forcing you to be renters. We used to have a word for this. We called it feudalism. And the moment we got out of that system, we created capitalism, and worldwide poverty shriveled up to nothing in a span of 200 years. And this dude wants to return us back to serfdom. It's almost as if that we have this great economic school of thought that literally birthed the book called The Road to Serfdom, if I'm not mistaken. Now, granted, I'm not great when it comes to economics. I understand some basic stuff, So I do need to read stuff like Wealth of Nations, Road to Serfdom. But truth be told, that works better than melatonin for me. It lulls me right to sleep. So I'm not going to claim being an expert on the economics, but I am smart enough to know that Dr. Benjamin Keyes, who is already thumbing his nose at the average person, not just at that committee, but at the average person in general. And that's because later on in this segment, and Senator Kennedy is really just digging into his skin here. And if you notice that this doctor is blinking really quickly, which is a telltale sign that he's either lying or that he's trying to hide the truth. And the fact is, this dude has either liked, retweeted, or directly stated that he thinks that you, the average person, is basically a low IQ, low information, knuckle-dragging, mouth-breathing moron. That's what he thinks about you. And so many in academia have this sentiment towards the average person. When I'm smart enough to understand, and I know that you're smart enough to understand, that owning your own home is a good thing. Now, what this dude's really about, because this is a part of the Senate Budget Committee. And this is why I don't like going after all of academia, although plenty of them deserve to be sent packing. There's a reason that tenure really needs to be readdressed. But there's another dude that's out here from the Daria Moore School of Business from the University of South Carolina, Dr. Robert Hartwig, who instead of being just this know-it-all big mouth who knows better than you, is simply doing what he's doing in this committee meeting is he compares California to Florida and even admits there's a similar problem with insurance companies. Whereas the other dude that Senator Kennedy was rightfully dragging through the mud and getting under his skin, this professor, again, Dr. Robert Hartwig, was simply saying that, hey, we have an insurance problem that's created by all this extra red tape and bureaucracy. If we get that bureaucracy out of the way, we're going to alleviate a whole lot of problems. But then you run into roadblock number 2, whereas Florida has to deal with hurricanes and the occasional tornado, not to mention, if you're north of Ocala, Florida man. If you're in California, on the other hand, you have to deal with a literal mountain of bureaucracy and red tape. You then have to deal with problems with mudslides, wildfires, the occasional major storm that comes off the Pacific. It happens, though it's usually a winter storm. And then you have to deal with potential earthquakes because it's a major fault zone with the San Andreas Fault. So yeah, California has a whole litany of issues, not to mention they don't manage their wildlife properly. They don't manage their wild space as well. And as a former park ranger who has actually seen what it takes to manage these spaces, the fact that California doesn't just reminds me that Democrats can't govern. And so you have this tale of two individuals from academia, one who's saying, you need to listen to me because I know better than you, whereas the other is saying, hey, I'm noticing a problem here. We've got a red tape problem, we've got a condition problem, and we've got a problem of actual management by the states, which the federal government can't really do anything about. And so this whole budget committee meeting at Senator Kennedy, let's be honest, no one needs to be at this meeting because there's nothing that the feds need to do because the federal government does not need to bail out California. It doesn't need to bail out Florida, except in times of drastic need, like a Category 4 hurricane, major flooding, and of course the big stuff like earthquakes, wildfires. That's when the feds need to get involved because those are actual disasters. But instead of talking about the potential for disaster and to mitigate it, one is talking about, well, I think the solution is you give up your property and let us handle it. Meanwhile, the same dude will call you a fascist for wanting to hold on to your property. Instead, he complains about this weird aspect of the internet that lives only on the internet. He's complaining about the alt-right. Give me a break. I love it when academia gets a giant steaming dump taken upon them, particularly by people like John Kennedy, because a lot of them deserve it. But then you have guys, and he's not on this screen, and I only bring him up to show that there's a difference between this rotten orange and this wonderful apple. And that's Dr. Hartwig, who is out there talking about the realities of the insurance problem and why the federal government is going to have to get involved at some point. That is what a committee meeting is for. Meanwhile, the other dude is talking about this weird, nonsensical idea to take away your property and give it to a management company. This just makes my blood boil because this is how people lose their wealth. The moment you give up the land, you give up your family's access to real wealth. We're seeing this in real time. And this hits differently for me for some reason. I'm a millennial. I'm probably not going to see too much property, and I might not even be able to own my own home. But I know for sure I'm going to be working with my parents to make sure that my parents and grandparents don't sell their property to a management company and make it a forever rental state. That is not fair to the American people. That's not fair to my potential children. That's not fair to your children and you as an audience. We deserve our opportunity to build our wealth, and one of these dudes not only thumbs his nose down at us, fortunately he gets called out for it, but thinks that we are terrible, vile people for wanting to hold on to our property and our God-given rights. This is just a terrible, terrible, flagrant attempt of academia to overreach and just make life more miserable for everyone else. And Senator Kennedy is calling him out wherever he can. And good for him. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.